Wow. Good afternoon, everybody. And if you're live, thanks for joining. And if you see this later, thanks for checking it out. This is actually my first attempt at a live podcast. I have done two tape recorded ones, one with Sarah Keller and one with Dave Savage. Both of them were great, gave fantastic content, but in both of them, I had quite a bit of production challenges, very primitive. So this is the first time we're trying to step it up a little production value. Hope you like it. You know, I'm using a different platform, different technology. We're trying to stream live on all platforms. I don't think it's working on Instagram, but we're trying to stream live on all platforms. And so it's fun. So thanks for being on the first one. I promise you we'll have a few wobbles, but no big deal. So thanks for joining me on Friday. I got a few things here. First, leading up to the podcast, there's another thing. We try to make some announcements about the podcast. I promised that I would have a reveal. I said I would do a reveal. I would do an announcement, and I have a guest. So the reveal is I'm really happy with my new brand logo, mostly for social media, though we'll use it in some other areas. And for that, I want to thank David King and Little Nessie. So Little Nessie Media, if you don't know David King, he is simply a leader in building brands. He's been a CBO, Chief Brand Officer, and CMO for some of the largest mortgage companies and real estate companies. He's simply a legend. He recently started his own media company, and he's helping me out with my media. He's helping me with my brand. He's helping me with my marketing, my collateral. If you want, a touch of an expert's hand, get a hold of David and the folks at Little Nessie Media. They're awesome, and he's also a really good dude. He unfortunately couldn't be here today because it's virtually a holiday, and he's whitewater rafting. But if I know him, he's probably trying to figure out how to get connection somewhere. So that's Little Nessie. Now, the announcements, my reveal is my little brand, which is great. The announcement is my company, HFG, made an internal announcement last week regarding my role at the company. And it's all positive, by the way. And what we internally announced is that going forward, I am not going to have day-to-day responsibilities, and sales will no longer report up through me. And these changes came about at my request. Just set the record straight. Bill Rogers is the CEO, president, founder, sole owner, and one of my best friends. I went to Bill a few months ago, and I asked if I could possibly be relieved of my daily responsibilities and if I could step away from sales reporting directly to me. And by the way, Eric Zier is in charge of sales. He's an awesome dude. He's not only a great leader and a great human, but he has a lot of game. So Eric and Bill, are fully in charge of that. But I said I wanted to still contribute to HFG. I still wanted to do, the strategic part of my job. I wanted to provide insights about the market, insights about not only the real estate and mortgage markets, but business insights. I wanted to continue to participate in, financial, the analytics around branch performance and individual performance, KPIs, P&Ls. I wanted to continue to contribute with business development, bringing opportunities to the company, and continue to represent the company out in the industry. So Bill was exceptionally generous and figured out a role for me. Thank you, Bill. And I'm exceptionally thankful. And then, that's the change. That's the announcement. All the HFG homies have been great. For the homies, I'm not going anywhere. It's just a little bit of a change. And thank you for support and encouragement. That is the announcement. So you've seen the reveal, you've seen the announcement. And by the way, I believe Bill will be joining me on my next podcast. And so we'll talk about this, but more you'll see Bill and I, we hang out all the time. We talk shop all the time. I really hope to get him on the podcast. We'll talk shop. We'll talk about the industry. We'll talk about his vision, where he's leading his company, how he is leading it through the storm, and how he's building to thrive in the future. So that will be probably next week if I can get it scheduled with Bill. Now let's move on to today's podcast. I'm super excited to introduce to you somebody who you may or may not know, another one of my really good friends, Jeremy Patterson. And as I bring Jeremy up to the stage, I'm going to call it that, I'm going to give him a little bit of an introduction. So, Jeremy, you should be live and you are unmuted, or you need to unmute yourself, and I will just introduce you. So, Jeremy and I started working together, I think, in 2004, maybe 2004, 2005. Exciting time, a long time ago, might have been a little earlier than that. We were at a small IMB. Jeremy had moved over from a call center, if I remember right, Jeremy, and you were eager to, kind of earn your chops as a fully sourced retail loan officer, elevate your game. It was really great working with you back then. We worked together for about 8 years. In that 8 years, we probably worked at 4 or 5 or 6 different companies, mainly because, during the Great Recession, our companies were going out of business at the rate of every 6 months or being bought or something. And so the name changed. But we went through different companies until Jeremy made the decision to change companies for another opportunity. And by that time, while we had still worked at the same companies, he no longer reported to me. And he really, he's really gone through this massive growth. And one thing you learn about Jeremy, he constantly is working on his craft, constantly trying to get better. He's a little bit like me in some ways. I live in the gap, not in the gain. Jeremy lives in the gap. We both have a little bit to learn about that. But today, Jeremy, I think you've been with Fairway about 6 years. You have your own branch at Fairway. In the pandemic peak years, you were plus $80 million every year. You might even hit 100. I know you're over 80 for a couple of years. And then here in the storm, you're still doing $40 million or more. I could have that off. I think you did around 40 last year, I'm pretty sure. And then the thing that's probably even more impressive, and you can correct me if this is wrong, Jeremy, I'm about to toss it to you. I think you have a unique distinction in that your branch made money every single quarter since you've had it. Upturn, downturn, and is that right? And then
Yeah, hey Ron. Yeah, that is right. It wasn't that we just made money. We stayed in the black, right? I think that was the key with every branch, right? As things are shifting and moving around us, right? It was one of the hardest things to do, and that came as a surprise. Where you just stay in the black, you do the right stuff as leaders, and you find a way to make it work.
Yeah, because one of your values is to contribute to your company, and you made a ton of sacrifices to do that. Okay, so Jeremy, did I miss anything? If you were going to introduce yourself, we didn't practice. This is, we're getting better, but we're not practice. Anything you would add?
No, I think that was good. I think I think the only thing I would add is I think you're overestimating my production a little bit, which, being the honest guy that I am, like, oh man, it feels uncomfortable, but closer to 30 million instead of 40. But I think that, in this market space, we just got to understand that life changes, things changes, and now's the time to get back to reality and get going.
I appreciate that humility, Jeremy, but when I made up those numbers, just to let you know, I was using Modex.
Oh.
And so Modex said you did $33.5 million last year. I don't think that captures all of your production. So
yeah, you're probably right.
But I will make up numbers. I'm like ChatGPT. Like, if it's convenient, I'll just make it up.
Well, I just want to make sure that people know I'm very conservative in what I do.
All right, so Jeremy, let me just go a little bit deeper as you introduce yourself. What makes you special, man? What makes you tick? What's your passion? Tell us.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about us and what we do is just our passion to serve others, right? I think that it's a servitude idea. And the idea really for us is, we're going to do loans great, and we're going to crush them, and we're going to do them quick, and we're going to do it all right. But I think what separates us from most, I have no problem helping a client make a fantastic decision around home ownership, because they should be homeowners, right? It's one of the most important things that we do. I think on one of your previous, podcasts, or you mentioned something about being the Sherpa of the home ownership journey, right? And I think our jobs as originators aren't just to close loans, it's to help consumers understand where they might want to go to close those loans if we can't, and if it doesn't make sense, right? Like, a couple of years ago, I think we all knew we were getting, beat up in ARM product, right? Like, all of us were really kind of navigating through that a bit. And for me, instead of telling a consumer, no, this doesn't make sense, it's let me help you understand what an ARM is and how it might work. And this is where you should go. Because our jobs are not to limit people from home ownership and wealth growth. It's to help them understand how to do it. And sometimes that means us not doing the loan. So if you count that amount of volume we did, Ron, and you look at the amount of production that we referred out because it was better for the consumer, like it's a whole different thing. So that's really what makes us special. It's the conversations around, building wealth through home ownership and really doing the right thing by the consumer. So that's what's super special with us.
Yeah, that's great. And you're super dialed in. Like you have a very structured process for your clients and your referral partners. But I mean, you have a buyer presentation that you've used forever. You evolve it, but it's super, not slick, but informative. And you're very intentional on your relationship management and all those kind of things. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let me ask you this. You are, I say you master your craft, right? You're constantly chiseling the stone, trying to figure out how to get better, pounding the stone kind of thing. And part of that, I mean, you've been coached a lot. I mean, you've been in the core level 3, you've been Duncan. You're constantly seeking. Now, you don't stay in any one coaching modality forever. You get what you think you need, and then you get a new input, right?
Yep.
But how does that, when you talk about pounding the stone and working on your craft, how does that all, what's your strategy there?
Yeah, I think when it comes to when you say strategy, you mean what we're doing, or kind of around the coaching piece of why we do what we do.
Strategy, and why do you keep getting coached, and what's your pursuit for constantly working on your craft? Why are you doing it?
I think that the biggest thing that we're doing it for is because we gotta serve people, right? I think there's so much misinformation and education out there that the reason I do it is for that. At this point in our career and in our lives, we don't really have to anymore, but we choose to because we want to, which is kind of fun. And when it comes to coaching, man, I think the reason I coach as often as I do and the people I surround myself with is because I think once you take what you can from a coaching, kind of like core is a good example, and their strategy and structure around building a team and what they do. And I think all that is really important, but I think it's also time sensitive. I think depending on what the market's doing, depending on what the future looks like, we have to continue to change, and different leaders pop up at different times to help us. So that's the purpose of moving coaching around and taking what I can from every morsel of time from people.
That's great. What are you working on now? From a personal development standpoint, what are you working on now?
So personal development, I'm really, like you, Ron, we've been trying to get more and more focused. I have a 4-year-old daughter that keeps me extremely busy, and ultimately I have to find a way to keep up with her. And it's over my life I have a unique story with that, and it's she's a gift, and that time is important. So I'm recognizing I got to get healthier. So I've been sober since January 12th, and I say sober because that's something that people, they go, wait a minute, sober? And you go, yeah, sober, because ultimately you have to kind of self-reflect sometimes and recognize what's good and bad for you. So kind of on that journey right now, which is great, and eating well and doing all the right stuff, and then trying to make sure that we keep our business going the right direction. So those are the personal goals right now.
And just to clarify, when you say sober, everybody, Jeremy's not a giant drinker. It wasn't like he's an alcoholic. Sober means he's not drinking any alcohol. Like it's the purity thing. It's not it's not like you had a problem. You just are trying to elevate your game. Right?
Yeah, no, and I think that it's a different level, right? So just like your reaction when somebody says sober, it means different than saying I'm going to take a 30-day break.
Yeah.
Like I'm going, okay, it's just not good for me, and I go, okay, like just cut it out, be done with it. Like there's other things that all of us do in life that we go, okay, well, it's not bad, it's not like, but could we be better? Yes. So there you go. Okay, I'm going to be better.
That's awesome. And Jeremy, we went through this, and thank you. We went through this first part of just kind of getting to know you, because our real topic today is one of the strategies you're trying to deploy that is slightly different than the rest of the industry. And I think it's fascinating, and I think people would like to hear it, but it helps if they know your mindset before we talk about it, so then it makes more sense, right? And
yes.
And what's happening is you've really been, I don't want to say struggling, but debating about the best way to help customers, right? Like, how can you be the very best instrument for your customers, right? And you've been looking at trying to figure out different models to deliver your services. You've considered, doing, like charging a flat consultation fee and referring loans to other loan officers. Like you would just be the facilitator. Like you've really kicked the tires on a lot of concepts, and you've landed on right now that you're going a new model, which is going to be a pricing model. You want to explain it, and then you might even talk about what you're trying to achieve with it and how you think it's going to work, and then I'll follow up some questions.
Yeah. So I think as we kind of mold and move in our careers, right, you start looking at what do you find most valuable for you. And for me, the servitude always comes back to that. So the model we're really working on right now, and like you said, we've kicked around it all. Like I thought, man, I'll just be a flat rate fiduciary. Like, why can't I help a consumer really understand where to go to get the best of the best and who to talk to? And so we've kind of gone through this paradigm shift. And right now, the biggest thing we're working on is most branches, most P&L models are on basis points, which I think we all understand what that is, right? Like a branch will say, I'm going to make X basis points on every loan. And that basis points kind of moves based on the loan amount. I'm looking at that differently, going, okay, well, what do I feel is fair for the consumer regardless? So we're going to go to a flat fee model, or we have gone to a flat fee model where we set a flat fee, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing $1 million loan, a $5 million loan, this is the flat fee. I think that when you look at manufacturing and you look at doing loans, you have to kind of understand what that manufacturing costs. You have to understand what your value is. And then based on that, you go, here it is. And I don't think that value changes. I'm a highly educated loan officer, been doing business for 22 years and can talk to anybody about finances. That's super valuable. But does it mean that on $1 million consumer, I should make more money compared to a $500,000? And that's kind of the conversation internally I've been going through. So we've gone to a flat fee model, and it'll be interesting to see how it works out.
And you rolled that out. Is it live now?
The pricing should be live on because the holiday won't be live till Monday. But we've already been pricing loans that way because that's something that every branch can navigate down.
So to be clear, you get your pricing from your company, right?
Correct.
And from that, you're just putting on X dollars.
Correct.
Right? And then you also charge branch fees, though, right?
Yes.
And if I recall, your intent is you want to have confidence that you are offering a competitive rate every time. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
And so whatever that fixed, margin you're putting on there, fixed dollar margin, you're going to adjust it to stay in the pricing spot you want to be in, right?
When you say adjusted, not per loan, not per strategy, right. It's per what the market's demanding
of
us.
Right. So if your fixed, dollar margin is whatever your target is, say you want to be in the top 20%, pricing your market, or top 10 or top 5, whatever you want to be, right? As a market moves, you'll, evolve that fixed dollar amount, not per loan, but as a strategy.
Yeah, I think that the consumers will eventually demand what they demand. And we're starting to see that more and more with real estate agents. We're seeing it in pricing models, right? And I think one of the hardest things is being a loan officer at heart. I also know that I'm unique and I'm different in the way that I'm okay making less money. And most loan officers, like when you talk to them about making less money, they go, no, I'll change companies. I'll go here. I'll go do this. You're like, wait a minute. It's a problem with how we're being paid, essentially, right? And kind of look at that and go, okay, like my choice, my branch, my P&L, we can do it differently. So It's a unique thought, but I think that it's really valuable for the consumer. It's really valuable for them to understand what we do and how we do it. And we're not going to take value away. We're going to add more value and try to become more valuable with less profit and serve more families.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's your strategy, right? It's going to be charge less, earn less, help more people.
Correct.
I should say charge less, earn less per loan, help more people, potentially earn more money overall, right?
Yeah, I mean, my thought, and I've been on both sides, Ron. Like I've seen, like for people that don't know me, right, there was a time in my life where I couldn't do work and couldn't do business. And then I was doing 1 or 2 loans a month, and every one of those loans matter. And then I built my business where I was doing 20 loans a month. And then it was like, oh, it's 20 loans a month. Like the stress relief of doing more loans is much more significant than the money you make on doing less loans and more margin.
You want to feather your pipeline with a steady stream of 20 closed deals, and you want to remove the friction of pricing, and you want to raise your conversion rate, because one of the biggest expenses we have in our business is low conversion. And this is a strategy that you think is going to achieve that, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a must.
And you also have a view on where the industry is headed for margin and LO comp. And my perception is you're trying to get ahead of the change, right? Like you're going to be in the front of the wave, not the back of the wave. And so you're creating a pricing structure today that then gives you the optionality to adjust to stay at the front of the wave as the market changes.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah. And then now, as you do, and by the way, I don't know what it is, but let's say your fixed dollar, like your average loan amount is 500,000.
Yeah, closer to 6, but yeah,
600,000, and so the fixed dollar amount that you're going to add to your company's raw rate they deliver you is a little bit over 100 basis points or something like that, right? It's
yeah. I mean, we landed on $6,500.
So a little bit over 100 basis points, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you think that the future is going to be that you might have to shrink that down to $3,000 over time.
Correct.
Right? Because the consumer demands more for less, has more choices. There's more low price providers. It's going to be a very, I think, monolithic priced world in the future, but you're going to be in front of that, not behind it. If that's the case, and if it's not, by the way, then you keep your margins. Good for everybody, right? But if that's the case, what do you have to do with your branch and your expense stack today to be able to accommodate that?
Yeah. So the most important thing in our branch is all expense, right? You have to watch expense. So I think you know this, Ron, but I'm a huge budget guy in my personal life and my family, right? We save money. We work on cash. Like I'm a unique guy.
You're an envelope guy. You're a Dave Ramsey guy.
I'm an envelope guy. Yeah. So people laugh at me when my friends go to get dinner and they're like, "Hey, you got to go to the envelope." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, actually I do." But it's something that so I'm strong in budget. I'm strong in finance. And like I said, there was a time in my life that I had to live on nothing and figure it out. So nowadays with a branch P&L, you go, okay, well, you look at that and go, okay, what are you not leveraging to build more value to the consumer, either convert higher or drive more transactions or relationships? And if it's not doing that, it's cut out. Like I have one of the most streamlined P&Ls. I'm being told I have one of the most streamlined P&Ls and I watch it closer than most.
Yeah. And, Jeremy, we talk about this all the time, but I believe, that frivolous expenses are friction to your borrower, and it's a disservice. Now, investments that add value make sense, but just frivolous expenses, it's like we're betraying the customer and creating fiction. And I know you're trying to squeeze those out. So what would it look like if you think the future market squeezes down to where you can only charge $3,000, which is half a point all in, by the way, that's not your comp. That's half a point to cover all your expenses.
That's to the branch. Yeah, that's to the branch, right? That's before a loan officer even paid. And it's crazy to think that way, but the only thing that solves that is implementation of technology, right? Streamlining follow-up, streamlining, you got to streamline everything. And you're going to have to get really, really good at more volume and serving more people, serving more families. It's got to come with it.
And to be clear, let's say, the way you are establishing it, so price on a Monday is you have 105 basis points branch margin, but you got to pay all your branch expenses out of that, and then you get paid. And it makes sense if you go from doing 10 loans a month to 20 loans a month or to 25 loans a month, right? And then that makes sense. That's the strategy, right?
Correct.
But there's another component of this. So one, you're positioning yourself to be competitive and to be able to get to volume and scale, right? But there's another strategy behind it that has to do with integrity, right? And this is a big part of it.
Yeah. It's so weird, Ron, as we talk about this, and I have conversations with my company, I have conversations with the pricing, model, and we kind of talk through this. One of the hardest things that I'm challenged with is my integrity of does an uneducated consumer have the right to pay more money for our product, right? When you start looking at it, right, does it make sense that a consumer that is more well educated, understands how to shop for a mortgage, gets a better deal? When I think that you look at kind of talking to a consumer, and I feel almost as if we're taking advantage of consumers in certain ways and going, well, if I can change my model or change my structure, I'll just change my structure to suit this one particular client. And I think that's something that eventually CFPB will look at, and pricing becomes kind of this moving target where what would it look like in a world of loan officers where it's like, this is our rate and you can't change it, right? Everybody in our market space right now wants to go, well, we'll price a little higher and we'll move it down if we need it. And I just look at that and go, okay, so some clients you can take advantage of and some you can't. And that to me is an integrity issue. And I go, man, it's really held me back the last couple of years as I've watched our market come down and our pricing come down and things change on us. I go, man, like, is this the right thing? Which is a big deal for me. I would much rather keep to my integrity and go, okay, I'd rather, make minimum wage and do 10 loans a month to serve people the right way.
Well, I think too, Jeremy, I think you're confident about putting out your cost and defending your value.
Yes.
It's hard to do that if what you're charging is variable, right? I mean, that's where
does your value vary? But that's the part I don't quite understand. And it's great because my team is on board. We understand why we're doing what we're doing. And they're like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So it gives us a lot more confidence when we're talking with consumers and knowing it. Now it puts us out of pricing sometimes, right? Like what if you're doing a $200,000 loan?
Yeah. Because your flat fee is your flat fee. So where it's 100 basis points on a $600,000 loan, it's 300 basis points on a $200,000 loan.
Correct.
Which is just simply declaring yourself that you're not going to serve that part of the market.
Yeah, and in our market, it's unlikely you see that anyways. But yeah, you kind of look at that and go, okay, now I'd love to get that branch fixed margin down lower, and it will happen as we start doing more volume. The idea would be not to leave it there. It'd be okay. Now we're kind of streamlining more. We've got more revenue. How do we get it cheaper? How do we do it better? How do we serve the client at a higher level? Stronger, right? Stronger, faster, cheaper, right?
Yeah, and then okay, so today on Tuesday you get a loan, $800,000 loan.
Yep.
And let's say $800,000 VA loan, and you give them your best price out the door, right?
Yep.
And you give them the pitch on how you're going to serve them, and lender for life, all that kind of stuff, and you give them the Jeremy bear hug, and they're feeling it. And then they go home and they get pitched by 8 other lenders, and another lender undercuts your rate. What do you do?
You got to keep it. You keep it where it is. You don't undercut it.
So you're not going to do a PE in that scenario. You're going to go, Mr. Borrower, this is my fee, and this is why I need to charge my fee, right? This is why I'm different. This is why you should pay me, but I can't afford to cut my fee, right? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, because ultimately, if I could cut my fee, why shouldn't I cut it now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Should it be fixed in? And Ron, it's a bit of hedging, right? For people that are watching this and understand kind of how, BIPs work, right? If you think about it, there aren't branches or revenue, tools that you can do it any differently, right? I mean, in the broker model, in the broker space, you can do borrower paid, but then your borrower paid is the same thing. So when you start comparing side by side, you go, okay, I'm not, when you look at that scenario, Ron, I'm not worried about the pricing because ultimately we're stronger than 90% of people out there because I'm willing to do it practically. I can't say for free because you're not doing it for free, but you're doing it at a space that others won't go because they're not willing to do it. Like you'd be asking in that situation, you'd be asking a loan officer to make 40 basis points, 30 basis points. They're not going to advertise that.
Yeah. Yeah. Although a call center, the average comp in a call center is like 30 basis points. So
yeah.
And they have economy of scale. So you could be undercut, but hopefully you'll be able to show your value greater than the call center person. Right.
Yeah, and you got to be able to do that from first contact through pre-approval, through your borrower's presentation. And I think that the disconnect for us is for the longest time, you kind of watch margins move, you watch companies move, and it's I can be competitive and show my value if I'm in the game, but I can't be playing rugby and then be playing football. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And once again, I mean, the strategy is more for less. And so even if you're not the lowest rate, that's where the more comes in. Right.
Correct.
Which is perfectly okay. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, how about so you have this flat dollar margin, and then how do you deal with house loans, refinance loans, past clients? What's going to be your strategy with those?
Yeah, so I think strategies for past loans, refinances, things like that, you got to be stronger there. I think it takes less production value to do a refinance than it does to do a purchase, right? Um, and I think that number's got to be cut in half. I think you have to find a way to do it in a way that you're serving your consumer at a very high level, because we're also competing with servicers. Like, we have to recognize that servicers are going to own that business, and if we're not very focused on getting to our consumer before they need us, and we're not focused on being in the ball game with a servicer, they'll do it at a loss to keep that servicing.
Yeah.
Like, do you
Yeah.
want to do refinances or not? And that's kind of the thought you have to have. And I think as loan officers, we're gonna have to look at that very clearly.
So have you set up your fixed dollar margin for refis yet?
Not for refis, so we're just trying to get it going for purchases. But I don't know if we're gonna have to navigate through it with our company and figure out how they're gonna do that on refinances, if they can separate out the two based on the pricing structure. I'm sure they can in Optimal Blue, but
They
we can
absolutely
navigate that.
can. They can, and it's compliant because it can be considered a company source loan because it's past client. The company actually owns the client.
Got it.
So you can easily do that. And then what other strategies are you working on?
So another strategy we're being really focused on is trying to navigate through how to not spend another family's money on another family, right? So what I mean by that is, how do you navigate through costs that you accrue by helping families that don't move forward in buying homes, and you pass them on to other families, right? Like, I think the mortgage industry will have to change before we tackle that big one, because ultimately a consumer is going to react. If we charge a credit fee up front, or you charge an application fee, or you move something around there, it's really hard because the consumers are going to always go to somebody that'll do it for free. So it's like, we're working on that kind of stuff, and we're working on CRM. We're working on, our buyer broker agreement, or I'm sorry, not buyer broker agreement, our buyer presentation, right? And trying to combine in our realtor partners and trying to help them be more valuable in those situations, and understand how to explain commission to consumers, and like all that stuff we're working on, just like everybody else probably.
You brought up a really good point, Jeremy, and this is an important point for everybody to pay attention to. You can't be a super low margin in a high expense environment. And so one of our highest expenses is, it's, unallocated credit reports, work number, right? Non-collected fees. And if you're converting 20% of your credit reports to close, that means you got this giant overhead expense, that 80% that what Jeremy's saying is charging to somebody else, right? Somebody else's fees are covering that. And so, Jeremy, you're trying to be this low price provider. You're trying to solve those things, and you're considering all sorts of things like charging an application fee, some sort of compliant fee, so that the people whom don't close with you pay their own way for your services while they're engaged with you. Is that right?
Yeah, we have to find a way to navigate through that, because when we spend money on things that don't close, it's like it's death to your P&L. It's death to costs, right? Like, I think that's the hard thing, right? Would you work for free, Ron?
I would prefer not to work for free.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Like, would you show up and be like, oh, like if you talk to a consumer, it's like, all right, would you work for free? Like, would you show up to work and they're not going to pay you for a week? Are you good with that? And the answer is no. But in our industry, I think it's kind of expected. And that's just a battle that's going to happen with time. As we start getting thinner and thinner in pricing, you start getting to a point where your manufacturing cost of a loan needs to come down to get thinner.
Yeah. And you need to allocate some of those expenses to the thing that generate the expense versus some other object, because then that makes you out of the market on that other object, right?
Correct. Yeah. And my guess, if you looked at some of those bigger companies, the amount of credit pulls they're doing, and like, I think part of that is that upfront conversation. We do an intake call, and we really, decide whether a client can do a loan, the motivation, all that stuff has to be upfront. We limit it as much as we can, and we don't have a lot of expenses that we accrue that way, but it happens.
But it's part of your global strategy. Look, I'm going to lower my rates so I do more volume and have higher conversion, which will support lower expenses.
Yeah.
Right. And then I might make some adjustments, like charging upfront fees for those people, to cover those people whom I don't convert, but only fees incurred, really specifically defined, because I want to be able to charge the lowest, fees to the clients I close with. Right. And I don't want to tax them by my inefficiencies from the people I don't close.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest things, right? And if you're watching it closely, you'll find the inefficiencies, but a lot of people don't watch them.
Yeah.
Well, we've
Yeah.
done it in our budget in our personal lives for the last 5 years, 6 years, right? You kind of go, okay, that's not good, right? You see it. You got to run towards the fire, not away from it.
Yeah, and put differently, your borrower who closes with you gets no value by you paying credit report expenses for other people.
Correct.
Like there's no value to them for that. Now,
No.
that's the way it works for us. But if we can eliminate that, then your margins look better because you have less tax to them, right?
Yeah, that's
And then
correct.
if the conversion rate goes up, you have less labor per loan, right? You're not wasting labor on loans that don't close.
Correct.
How did your company receive this, proposal?
It was really good. Yeah. I mean, so I think as we kind of navigate through this and we start talking about this stuff, I think everybody's talking about it, but nobody's willing to navigate through it, right? Once again, my focus on servitude is the most important thing. And by doing what's best for the consumer, I think it's been received really, really well. Now it's just a matter of, okay, show us it works, right? It's kind of that thought process now.
Yeah, and I almost said this absolutely the wrong way. I probably will still anyway. You're just not some desperate loan officer with no volume. I mean, you're an accomplished loan officer with a lot of volume. You have exceptional presentation tools, and you have a highly designed customer experience journey. You're very engaged with your past clients. You're not doing this out of desperation. You're doing this out of principle, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people I talk to, people that know me really well, understand how strong fiscally we are. They understand what we do for our consumers, right? They understand we do have a buyer presentation. We do sell on value. We don't sell on, I'm going to be the cheapest.
Yeah.
But I think that eventually my heart gets in the way of that too, Ron. Like if I tell somebody, hey, they compare us and shop us, they find somebody cheaper, right? Am I going to just not help them?
Yeah.
If they have a problem or have a question, they call me, I'm just going to ignore the phone call, right? So I think that it's not about being the cheapest. It's about going, okay, how do we really pay close attention to this to where I don't have to use the brain space in it all?
Yeah. Yeah. And Jeremy, you were early, out in the financial literacy. You've been doing financial literacy seminars out in the public for years.
Yep.
Right. Your buyer consultation is really a financial plan surrounding home ownership. You have, I think you still have large quarterly, customer events. You're exceptionally philanthropic. You're a leader, in a bunch of different charities and community. So like I said, this is just your overall, it's part of your values, of how you want to serve a client. And it doesn't mean you don't care about money, because your idea is I serve them better, I help more clients, we all win, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's not that I want to live on nothing, right? That's not the point, right? The point is to do what's best for the consumer and have it resonate with them and be competitive in a space where you just go, okay, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Like Ron, we've all been through it as loan officers, right? You lock a loan and you're concerned, you don't know if your pricing's there. They go to the bank, they find somebody cheaper, they move in the middle of it. The one thing that saves loan officers rear ends is speed.
Yeah.
Right now, if you have to close a loan in 12 days, 10 days, clients don't have the opportunity to move around.
Yeah. And that's definitely a strategy that has evolved the last couple of years. There's a legion of loan officers. Their goal is to close a loan in 11 days.
Yeah.
Everyone, whether the borrower wants it or not. Like, my defense against being poached is to get this loan closed and to move so fast that it takes the borrower's breath away and they don't have the ability to move, even if they wanted to, even if somebody seduced them with the best rate and fee. But once again, you don't need to do that as a trick, because you're trying to give them the best fee and value combination. But still, that will just help remove more friction in the process, by getting them to the closing line, sooner.
Yeah, we can still do loans in 10 or 12 days, right? But it doesn't change what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I think that's the thing where what protects, and Rob, we've talked to these loan officers. I know that strategy well, and I've said it to several of my realtor partners, like speed is the enemy of the consumer, right? Because when somebody's making the decision quickly or they have to move quickly, they don't have the opportunity to change the decision. And I think as the market changes, right, that the market was so busy anyways, we had to move quickly. But as the market starts to shift a little bit and you start to get more of the 30-day closes, you get like, but when somebody's coming to you and saying, hey, let's just close it in 10 days, it's like the consumer can't shift or move.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how does a consumer shop when they go into escrow? Well, they should have shopped before. Well, they didn't have all the numbers. Like, how do
Yeah.
they shop?
Yeah. Hey, I would be remiss, and if I didn't ask you, how are you helping your agent partners with the whole NAR settlement? Like, what are you saying to them? How are you helping them?
Yeah, we had a meeting actually on Wednesday with a couple partners, and we're doing a lot of different things. So one, I'm really trying to help real estate agents understand the value of doing a really solid presentation, right? Where to meet a client, what does the experience look like when they first talk to clients, right? I think that they now have to become the pros at understanding not only the buyer broker agreement, but understanding how to show their value to a consumer in a way they're not used to. We're also really focused in on the difference between brand and sales, right? Over the last 5 years, their brand would get them the opportunity for a client, and it would also close a deal for them.
Mhm.
Now their brand is getting them a phone call and a conversation, but it's not getting them the sale because they have to sell them on why they're more valuable than the other agent willing to do it cheaper. So we're having a lot of conversations around that. So, um, and then also being available to do buyer presentations with them, having our realtor partners be involved in our buyer presentations when they want to plug in. And we have that with our consumers because we're also making sure that every one of their clients understand they get us because we're a team with our partner and our agent. So we're working on that. So it's a lot of scripting. It's a lot of conversation.
I love that brand versus sell. That's awesome. Did you come up with that? That's great.
Worked on it. Yeah, it's just different, right? It's part of my current coaching strategy, right? As we kind of look through this, right? As even as loan officers, we battle that, right? Work
Yeah.
with me because we're great. Well, that's your brand.
Yeah. 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 It's so true. Do you have any other topics you want to cover? This has been great. You're knocking it out, man. I'm so
Yeah.
glad to have you on.
Thanks, Ron. No, I think that's good. I think that, I think the biggest thing is the topic of, the thought of, we talked about it last week, right? We did one of those walk and talks that you always talk about. And we talked about the thing that has been really resonating with me constantly as I talk to my team and we kind of navigate through this is the whole, Apollo 13, 20 amp strategy, right? And we kind of talked about the reality that, what I'm doing right now is going through and going, okay, I'm on the moon trying to get back to the earth and I got to get my sequence down to 20 amps. And, if you guys don't remember Apollo 13, that was the whole thing. They can't get back to earth. You don't get down to 20 amps. So as I go through my P&L, I constantly look at it and I look at what we're doing and everything we're doing. I'm going, okay, how do we get down to 20 amps? Because I'm not going to land this plane if I'm not at 20 amps. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so thank you. It's a really good exercise to do because it really starts to differentiate want versus true need, right? If you only have 20 amps to spend on getting spaceship back, well, you don't get air conditioning or you don't get heating or you don't do you want it? Yes. Do you absolutely need it? No. And Jeremy, thanks for teeing this up because I'm going to use this Apollo 13 philosophy on my new normal series on Thursday where I talk about expenses and friction. And so I'm gonna hold off responding because this will go for like 4 hours, dude.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that.
And you mentioned, and you're right. I'm a huge believer in walk and talks is a great, platform for having great conversations. I've talked about it ad nauseum, but Jeremy, you and I started doing walk and talks in like 2004, right?
Yeah, been a long time. Yeah.
So and we've consistently done it for 20 years.
Well, until you get too busy and you can't get to San Diego.
No, that's not true, Jeremy. But in those 20 years, the cadence has changed. Or we there was a couple of years we did it weekly. Like we were battling the demons and we were trying to figure stuff out weekly, right?
Yep.
And then we've done it monthly. And even now we don't live in the same state, but say in the last 12 months we've made like 10 out of 12 or something like that, right?
Yep,
and the two
correct.
we didn't make is because one of us was traveling someplace else, not that we didn't make the effort.
Yeah, and we still talk and still go through it. I think having good mentorship, being able to talk finance, and I think, Ron, you've been that person I've always looked up to because you kind of high tide raises all boats, right? You want to be around the right people all the time and get financial influence from those people, which is why you also take coaching. So It's always a pleasure to do those, and I would suggest anybody doing walking talks with anybody that they respect and want to talk business and have a couple really good strategy conversations. It'll change your life and you get healthier.
Yeah. You get those endorphins going. Thank you for those comments, Jeremy. You get those endorphins going. And the thing is, Jeremy, we argue. Like it's not like we're polite. Like, this is what I think. And you go like, I don't think that way. And we gain something from that, right? I learn from you all the time. And so I'm a huge believer in it. We've been, I mean, there was a couple years we did it every week, man. We were in dark places, apparently. We needed something with a head.
Very true.
Anything else, dude? You've been great.
No, man, that's it. I hope that, I provided enough value for you, and I hope it helps anybody listening to this stuff that we can serve people. Like that's the best part of our job. It's not the closing, it's not the money, it's the servitude. And that's where my heart is.
And Jeremy, the thing I like, okay, you're rolling out a strategy, right? You're trying to understand where the puck's going. You're trying to figure out how to skate there, and you're rolling out a strategy. People listening can go, I don't agree with that, or I'm not going to do that, or he's wrong. Fine. You can have your own strategy. But instead of just, being a victim to whatever is going to happen, you're trying to navigate to a certain destination. And I totally appreciate that, and then you're trying to create a structure that will allow you to pivot going forward. Like you're building the foundation today, knowing that it's going to evolve over time, but you're building that now.
Yes.
And I think that's super wise, because I do think we're going into a very, low cost provider, low margin, low comp world. It will take us some time, but the consumer is going to be empowered, and completely empowered. All right, brother. Anything else you want to just bring up before we start wrapping this up?
No, man, that's it.
Yeah. And just for everybody watching, as you look at Jeremy's background, it's somewhat austere. Trust me, he's made plenty of money.
Whoa. We live a minimalist lifestyle, and I mean, it looks a little poor back here. And
we just did a furniture in the background, bare walls. It's not that bad, everybody.
Well, we just did do a remodel, so we're trying to figure out a way of what we want on the walls after our remodel. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jeremy, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody that tuned in today, whether you listen live or if you're listening to a recording. I am up for your feedback and, encouragement. If I didn't push a button, if the sound's off, if we come across red face, let me know. We can definitely work on it. It's a constant improvement on this part. I'm super excited about the future, for the industry, for each one of us. As I mentioned, I'm going to try to do these, podcasts once a week. I think I'll post them at a regular time. I'll try to make most of them live. Some guests can't be live at that time. I'm motivated to do these podcasts because I just think there's so many interesting people out there like Jeremy that has something to share that will help each of us expand our own thought, And so, Jeremy, you did a great job with that. Thank you, everybody. Jeremy, I think we transmitted. I think we got through most of the technology. You are awesome. Have a great weekend. Jeremy, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.